Welcome to Stand Up and Little My Daddy's the host.
All right. Thanks to my wonderful daughter for the introduction. If you're new here, my name is Rick Crawford. I am the host of The Sustainable Angler, which I created to inspire anglers to protect the planet, which is why I am excited to hear today's interview. I have Ted Upton. He is the CEO of North Point Brands, also known as Cheeky Fishing and Wingo Outdoors. And we talk about the history of Cheeky and Wingo and how they got started. We also talk about some of the sustainability initiatives that their company has going on. Notably, they are recent members of 1% for the Planet, which is awesome, but they do a ton of other stuff. They have the Schoolie tournament. They've been giving back to conservation since their inception. So just a really cool brand. And if you are a small business owner, I think you'll want to listen to this because Ted provides some really interesting insight. So I hope you enjoy. And if you like what you're hearing, by the way, if you could do me a favor and leave a review on iTunes or Apple Music. This helps to get the podcast out in front of more listeners. So we can hopefully inspire even more anglers to protect the planet. So thanks for tuning in. Sustainable Angler is brought to you by Emerger Strategies. Emerger Strategies is a sustainable business consultancy that's helping our clients prove that doing good is good for business. To learn more, visit www.emergerstrategies.com.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Rick. I'm really excited to be here. Ted Upton, CEO and founder of Cheeky Fishing and Wingo Outdoors. I grew up in the great state of Maine and was an avid trout fisherman and striped bass fisherman growing up. That translated shortly into college into wanting to turn my passion into my work. And shortly after college, I founded Cheeky Fishing with 3 business partners who are still involved in the business today. And we were inspired to try to do things differently. We were younger. We approached the sport differently. We like to have a lot of fun. And, at that time, one of the things that I think is challenging about the fly fishing industry is it can often be hard to approach, right? And so, especially for new anglers getting into the sport. So when we started Cheeky Fishing, that was one of our key founding principles was accessibility and access to the sport through education and trying to have some fun while doing it. So that's why Cheeky is what it is. It's got those bright colors, fun designs, and obviously fast forward 12 years, we're a leader of fly reel manufacturing and design. Somewhere along the way, we also started a second brand, Wingo Outdoors, you may be familiar with as well. We capitalize on a lot of the fun things we've learned through Cheeky and translate that to Wingo with great designs, high quality accessories and products for a little bit of a different consumer. We target the intersection of what we like to call dog and outdoor. I think as all us fly anglers know, a lot of us are dog owners. And so we've had a lot of success with Wingo tapping into the dog market and its intersection with outdoor passions.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And and thank you for joining and carving some time out and joining the podcast today. I think that when I first started getting into fly fishing I know specifically, it was 2008. But when I first went into a fly shop and saw Cheeky's reels, and I don't know when that was, but whenever that was, but it was very different and distinguishable from anything else that you saw, which was, as an entry-level fly angler, to your point, I mean, it can be a little intimidating sometimes going into a shop and you've got people that are essentially talking a different language
Like, oh, well, and then, you might want to think about this PMD and and you're like,
Yeah, it can be an intimidating sport to get into, and not everybody, grew up with it or had the
yeah,
luxury of having a family member to help them sort of learn the sport and get into it. And so, for us at Cheeky, trying to do things differently and have some fun with it was always core to the mission. But you're right, like we started in 2010, so that's when our fly reels hit the market. Back then, there was very little. Differentiated in the terms of the way it looked in the reel case, as you point out, come in and be blacks and silvers, maybe some gold. But we came out with pinks and blues and greens and had a lot of fun with it. We actually took our inspiration from the ski industry. I don't know if there's any skiers out there, but we're all big time skiers. And you saw a lot of like independent, smaller manufacturers doing great things with film and media, but also technology with their products and really cool and interesting graphics. So that was a huge inspiration for us from the get.
What well, you bring up an interesting point with that. So as skiers, you saw that. Were there any other companies or industries or heroes, if you will, that you sort of looked up to and was like, hey, let's try and model, or you were inspired by it, whatever. What can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, sure thing. There were so many in the ski industry, and I think that really was the big one for us, Rick. Like we saw, there were a lot of giants in the ski industry. Really Rossignol and K2, and really big companies that have been around forever. But back in that time, and kind of the 10 or 15 years from the mid to late 90s up through about 2010, when we were getting our company started, you did see a lot of these small, independent, alternative companies leaning into like almost a more progressive demographic of skiers. We love the family element of skiing. I have 3 young kids, right? There are all these younger folks like taken to the backside of the mountain or even the park or doing things a little bit differently. And those larger brands, they weren't really able to cater to this new demographic because it sort of alienated their base. And we looked at that and we're like, this is a really interesting opportunity in the fly fishing space where, yes, we also have larger companies that have a base of more traditional anglers, which we also love. But there are other anglers out there, chasing new species in their backyard or have the luxury to be able to travel a little bit and chase species around the world with different equipment, faster action, different lines. And we felt like there was an opportunity in the marketplace to design equipment for that angler and sort of model after that. So that was our real inspiration. I would say that at the end of the day, and this has been a focus of ours for 12 years, it's all about product. So for us, like a lot of what we're talking about is kind of the market and demographics, but we've always felt and believed that top quality product is it starts and ends there. So, if you don't make really great products that are performance oriented, reliable, dependable, then there's not much point in much of the other conversation. So I believe it starts and ends with product, but to be able to approach it in a way that's a little bit different with marketing and your consumer demographics, that's what Cheeky's really all about.
Well, that is super cool. And you see the same thing reflected in, I would say, in Wingo, right? And that it is all about product, unique design, always stood out from, I mean, obviously you can answer this, but I mean, it was definitely, I think, the first any sort of like fishing scale or design, like belt or something that I saw, which I definitely have some. Another one of those things that stood out in the lineup, of like products that were out there.
It's kind of a fun story, actually. It was at a boat ramp takeout, and we were all taking off our waders, and there were 6 or 7 of us, and there were like Patagonia bags and ski, raincoats that were bright colored, and all this stuff laying on the ground that I was looking around, and I sort of noticed, why is everyone's wading belt black? It's just this like accessory that comes standard on a belt. And anyway, it started to bug me after 2-3 months. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's a super small idea. But I was like, you know what? We're going to make wading belts with colorful, fun designs and give people an opportunity to accessorize that portion of their of their gear, in the same way that their sort of their bags and jackets and all those things are bright and fun, and allow you to bring a little bit of your own style. So we did it. It took off. We sold out like instantly. And then we started making dog collars and leashes and everyday belts and socks and other just fun everyday accessories.
Yeah.
And gear that allowed you to bring a little bit of your outdoor passion into your everyday life. But yeah, it's all about the product and having fun with designs and patterns and quality and materials. And the biggest thing for us, especially recently too, the big pillar for us is sustainability and how we approach product from a total footprint perspective. And that's been a huge part of our focus over the last several years here.
Nice. And on the sustainability front, which I know that y'all are members of 1% for the Planet, as am I, or my company, Emerger Strategies, which is a big commitment. But y'all actually have an initiative, and it's 3% though. But you're a 1% for the Planet member. Could you tell us a little bit about that initiative?
I sure can, Rick. Yeah. So I think the first thing though that I want to say is that this is a journey for us. We're not there yet. And we're just at the beginning. And there's so much more that we hope and aim to do. Not only because it's the right thing to do for the planet and the places that we love, but I also think it's good for business as well. And I also think we can be an example, even though we're a small company. We want to be an example for a company of any size that can be all in on sustainability. So, we're not all the way there yet. We don't claim to be. We vow to get there in the end, but we're taking some steps that are exciting and really interesting. So you mentioned our 3% give. Yep, it's a 3% give, and it's also not of profit. It's 3% of our revenues. So I think that's a really important distinction to understand. Not every company is profitable all the time, right? And so when it's 3% of profit, that's wonderful, especially when it can be a meaningful contribution in the end. But one of the things that we think is so impactful and meaningful about 3% give of our revenue is that anytime an order is placed by a retailer or on our website, 3% of that order is going to go to conservation organizations that help our planet. You mentioned 1% for the Planet. We also joined 1% for the Planet as part of this 3% initiative because we really wanted a third-party framework to govern our entire 3% give. We thought it was really important. There's a lot of like greenwashing stuff out there and just giving for giving's sake and trying, for the sake of the corporation and growth and revenue. And that's not what we want. We want a real framework. We want to make a real difference. When we give, we want it to be audited. And so that's why we joined 1% for the Planet in conjunction with our 3% give. So even though we're doing 3 times as much as the 1% requirement, we're using that same framework to make the give. And all of our give is to 1% for the Planet members, nonprofit members.
And who are, I know y'all donate to several. Who are some of the nonprofits that y'all are donating to?
Good question. And I think one of my philosophies in general has been to try to be at least a mile deep instead of a mile wide. So I don't have a list of 46 organizations that we donate to. We're doing more and more, but our main ones right now are Trout Unlimited. We do a tremendous amount of work with CU, backcountry hunters and anglers. We really believe in access, as we talked about at the top of the call. Public access, so important. So that's huge. We do a lot of work with Science on the Fly. We do some testing right in our backyard for our local waters. And then, as you may know, we host the world's largest fly fishing tournament, the Schoolie Tournament, every year on Cape Cod, hosted by us. And we're thankful to have so many great sponsors like Sims and Costa and Yeti. But all of the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds, from that event go to Keep Fish Wet, the American Saltwater Guides Association, and Stripers Forever. So those are a few of the organizations that we try to be as committed to as possible with our giving.
Well, and that all let me back up. I guess I should say there are so many companies out there that for some reason don't necessarily understand the importance of giving back to conservation the way that y'all are, particularly as you mentioned, in an auditable way with 1% of the planet, right? And having sort of a third-party certification, but also these great nonprofits that are doing work to protect and restore the fisheries that your business is dependent upon, aside from what we all love, right?
That's absolutely right. And like we said, it's not just the right thing to do for the planet, which is the first and most important thing. It's also can be good for business. If we can't protect the water that we love, then it won't be there as a resource for us to use in the future.
It's gonna be tough to sell reels with
yeah, exactly. And so but I think each of those organizations is a really interesting approach. They're all different. And so I think that's healthy too from a giving perspective. But yeah, having that auditable framework for this, I think it's really important. By the way, a huge portion of it is obviously we're doing 3% give and writing a lot of checks, but I think it's important to call out that we're also involved with our time with these organizations. We like to do river cleanups. We like to roll up our sleeves and actually do the work as well. And so I think that's another important piece. It can't just be about writing checks. It also has to be about a genuine kind of interest and passion for working with these organizations. And I think many of them would tell you that a lot of times they value the help and the work, and the having our team contribute to the work they're doing can be just as valuable in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And there's something also so I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and the volunteer stuff I do has a lot to do, aside from trash cleanups, has a lot to do with oyster shell restoration. And so we recycle oyster shells, make new reefs out of them. And there's also just something really, deeply rewarding about going out and actually getting your hands dirty and doing it for, the love of the fishery and the place.
Totally. I'll give you two examples of that. Science on the Fly is a really interesting organization. If you don't know it, check it out. It allows you to do local water testing in your backyard and send that data in a way that creates an index of data all over the country. So super fascinating way to get involved with citizen science. Another really exciting thing about the schoolie tournament this year is we used this year it as a platform to launch the largest catch and release study of striped bass in the world ever that's ever been conducted. And that's in conjunction with a really prestigious grant from the Woods Hole Sea Grant, and working with scientists from UMass Amherst. So the schoolie tournament was actually a kickoff this year. We had scientists on the ground working with teams from the schoolie tournament to collect data on catch and release for striped bass. And that's a 3-year study, I believe. So it'll be going on the next couple of years. And we're really excited about that. It was so cool to be involved in that, work with the scientists, catch a fish, collect data, and do some of the accelerometer work that they're doing as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. And so that'll be ongoing the next couple of years, I guess, of the tournament.
It will, yeah. So we're really excited about that.
That's killer. Well, you mentioned, kind of a sustainability as a journey, right? It's kind of a never-ending continuous improvement story, right? It's no company is perfect. Every company makes some sort of an impact environmentally, socially, that can be positive or negative. It's just the nature of business, right? It's the way the world works. But can you tell us a little bit more about y'all's sustainability journey? I know conservation has been sort of embedded baked in really since inception probably, but could you tell us a little bit more about y'all's journey?
There's more to it than that, and it is a journey, and I think there's a lot we need to keep working on. So one of the things that we're really focused on right now, just kind of a look under the covers, if you will, we're really focused on our packaging. It's one of the ways that I think we can make an immediate impact, and also evaluating and understanding what what is our overall footprint. And we make product all over the world. We make a lot of product here in the US. We make some in China and Korea. And so understand, I think one of the first steps, for anyone listening that's trying to understand, how could I get started with something like this? I think trying to understand your footprint and doing that analysis is one of the best ways to get started and realize, what can we be working on? What are the areas? It's not just about writing checks or even volunteering for the time. As you pointed out, every business has an impact. And so trying to minimize that impact, I think, is really important. So those are some of the other things that we are focused on here at North Point Brands.
Well, that's super cool. And I mean, I think that's really important if anyone is listening who's a business owner, to take away from that is like, you have to start somewhere, and it's about kind of wrapping your head around, okay, where are we? Where can we improve? And then taking those steps. And I commend y'all for taking those steps. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of what y'all have going on when y'all are ready to close the hood and
Yeah, absolutely.
and let us in.
We hope to make steps every year, meaningful steps with all of our product production, packaging, and our work with conservation organizations. So, this year we were really excited to lean into our initiative to give 3% back and join 1% for the planet as that framework. The Schoolie Tournament, something that's been ongoing for over a decade, and a huge platform for conservation there. And then our work with some of these other organizations I mentioned has been something we've really done since the very outset. We've been partnered with Trout Unlimited and others since the day we started.
That's super cool. Well, can we dive a little bit deeper into the Schoolie Tournament? Because I mean, you're kind of saying this nonchalantly, but and I have never been to it, but I mean, it is massive. I mean, you mentioned the world's biggest, but I don't think people, if you're not familiar with it, understand how big it is. It's a huge tournament.
It is. We're so privileged to be able to host it. We started it in 2011, so this was our 12th annual this year, and it has grown swiftly into it really is the largest fly fishing tournament in the world. We have to cap it. I think we had over 600 participants in total this year. Such a fun tournament. Why is it so big? Why do so many people want to be involved? I think there's look, we're New England saltwater fishermen. We are pent up all winter long, right? And so the only thing we want to do in May, when the weather is starting to get nicer and the fish are migrating up the coast, is break for Cape Cod and do some fly fishing with friends. And so what's so unique about the Schoolie Tournament, it's not $1,000 to enter. You don't need a boat. It's wade fishing only, fly fishing only. The boundaries are all of Cape Cod, and all you need is a buddy and a fly rod and reel to go. And so the barrier to entry, true for anything that Cheeky does, the barrier to entry is it's really low. It's easy to get involved, and so it's really a special event. I would say it's become sort of a festival style event. All of the sponsors are there doing product demonstrations and exhibiting and showcasing their new products for the year ahead. And more than anything, it's a platform for striped bass. It's all about the fish. And that's what people that's what we care about. That's what the participants care about. And this, striped bass need our help. So we're a voice for that. We've tried every year to implement. That's why we partner, for example, with Keep Fish Wet, why we partner with American Saltwater Guide Association, why we partner with Stripers Forever on this event. They're all there. And we have, different interesting pieces of the event like this catch and release study that we add every year to really, I mean, like I said earlier, Rick, it's a privilege to be able to host this thing and what it's turned into. So I think it's our duty to use that privilege and make sure that the tournament is a platform for conservation and a voice for the fish.
So, well, I love that. And how well, first off, 600 is pretty wild. I mean, that is a ton of anglers. So that's super cool in and of itself. And I just see pictures and stuff, and I'm like, man, one day I'm gonna make it up there for it. Like,
it's a cool scene to see everyone together. It's a celebration of the fish. It's the sort of the informal kickoff to the season, and to have so many like-minded anglers focused on conservation in one place. And being able to learn, not just us too, like as the hosts, like we're learning every year about the fishery and the species and adding new things to the tournament. But it's a great opportunity for participants to come out and maybe learn about some of the data and data collection, best fish handling practices, all those good things.
so you mentioned, so this is sort of all in celebration and in honor of striped bass, stripers, as y'all call them. What are some of the threats that you mentioned, sort of, or you alluded to, I guess, that these fish are facing?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, and it is seemed to go in a little bit of a systemic pattern. And right now we're at a really tough crossroads. There's a lot of overfishing going on. There's a lot of lack of in the commercial side of things. There's a lot of lack of understanding on the recreational side of things of what our impact is on the fishery. And I think that's one of the things that's really, really interesting about the catch and release study, is it's the first time we're going to be able to understand in a long time what our recreational impact is on the striped bass fishery. So I'll tell you a story. I went with a couple of the scientists, and it's a little bit excruciating, to be honest, but I caught a fish, and what they do with it is they take all the data and collection, and then they do an air exposure test. They lift the fish out of the water for a certain amount of time. They record the amount of time. They have several, whether it's 20 seconds, 40 seconds, 60 seconds. And then they release the fish, and they're looking for certain things. Like they'll put it upside down. Does it correct itself? They'll put an accelerometer on it. And what that means is they actually hook it to the accelerometer, at least, to a spinning rod with the bail open, and they can see how fast the fish swims, if it rests and stops. And so they're able to collect all this data. And while this was going on, shortly before this, across the way, we were fishing on Cape Cod, was a group of traditional anglers, and they had caught a fish. They were trying to understand if it was a keeper size. And they had to have had this fish out of the water for 60 seconds. And I was watching this, and then turned and watched the study we were doing like 5 minutes later, as the scientists are holding the fish out of the water, and was like, boom, that is the use case. That is the data. This is why we are doing this, because as recreational anglers, we need to understand our impact on the fishery. So I think those are some of the things that are the biggest threat, and it's the ball's in our court. We have to do our part as recreational anglers.
Yeah, and Keep Fish Wet. I'll just mention, as I know that Ted is and Cheeky and Wingo are all supporters of Keep Fish Wet. I think a lot of anglers, if you catch a nice fish, it's nice to get a photo and all that, but you really are on a clock. It's like, hey, this is not like, hey, let's lollygag and, mess around with fish. It's like, all right, hey, if you're going to take a photo, have it ready to go back in the water. Like get your pick and put it
Or
down.
don't take it out of the water in the first place, right? And I
Right.
think that's one of the reasons this data is going to be really interesting to collect over 3 years with such an immense amount of data. Is it will likely show what you're talking about. The longer you keep the fish out of the water, the less likely a chance it has to survive. And so you're on the money. For those listening, trying to keep the fish in the water at the water level, you can create, if you need to take a picture, if that's really important to you, do it at the water level. It's a beautiful photograph that way. And the fish is in its natural habitat. There's no real reason to lift it out. Or if you do, make sure it's dripping wet and right back in a second or two. So, but yeah, that's right.
What, so we've kind of, and thank you for all that. It's really interesting to hear, which I had no idea, but it now makes sense, obviously, after talking to you. But the sort of the origin of Cheeky and sort of the access component to it, and conservation being a part of y'all, huge part of your brand, and going on this journey. It's all been really interesting to hear, and about the tournament. But what we have not talked about is what does Ted Upton like to fish for, and where does he like to go? What kind of flies does he like to use?
Totally. Well, so I grew up in Maine, and people ask me this question all the time, like, if you go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why? And I like to travel as much as the next guy, believe me. But there's just something special to me about fishing for landlocked salmon and wild brook trout in Maine. I think, Rick, for me, like, fishing, the reason that I love to fly fish is because of the places that it takes me to. I love to catch fish and target different species, and that whole process is really fun for me. But it's really, we talked about sustainability being a journey. For me, fly fishing is really about the journey. I love the adventure. I love being out in the woods. I love being off the grid. I love being there with good friends and family. So for me, maybe it's because I grew up fly fishing in Western Maine, but that's just that's the best. On the other hand, if you want to put me on the front of a tarpon boat and target some tarpon in Key West, I'll gladly oblige for that as well. So.
Yeah, I've been on a tarpon odyssey this year, and I have been to the Keys a few times. I fished for them here in South Carolina, in North Carolina, and in Virginia this year. So I've more or less followed a migration, and have fed them, I've hooked them, I've jumped them, and I have not landed one, and it's driving me nuts.
My last tarpon trip was last June. We landed about 5 minutes before in Key West, about 5 minutes before the tropical storm did. I think we were the last airplane in. We were there for 3 days of fishing. We got on the boat 0 times and basically bar hopped through Key West while there was at least 8 or 10 inches of rainwater in the streets. It was a 3-day storm, and we were there for all 3 days. And then I'm pretty sure we got the first flight back out. So that was the fishing trip of where we didn't fish. But I got a little thrown after that one, and it didn't go back this summer. But I'd like to get back there.
All right, a couple more fishing questions I want to throw at you. So you mentioned brook trout in Maine. What is your you get stranded and you've got one fly that is gonna keep you fed while you're waiting to be picked up by somebody? What fly is it?
Probably a conehead yellow marabou muddler minnow.
All right. I don't even think I can repeat that back. That's a mouthful.
Marabou muddler minnow in yellow conehead. Yeah. Okay. I would accept a green as well, but I prefer yellow.
Okay. See, this is why I do this podcast. See,
I see now. I got your motivation down.
Yeah. I ask everyone these questions so that I get this get this figured out. All right, and striped bass. Is there a particular fly that you prefer when it comes to those?
There is. It's called the Long Run One, tied by the great Mike Rice of Mud Dog Flies, and it's pretty much the only fly. Well, let me say this: that's the fly that I tie on first every time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're confident in that fly.
So much of it is that piece, the confidence that, and I feel that way, especially striped bass fishing, but also other types of fishing. The confidence piece, for me, believe it or not, if you feel like that fly's fishing, like it makes a difference. So
I don't know what it is. It has yet to be discovered by science, but there is some sort of vibe that a fish is going to pick up on that, and part of it is the confidence of like, I feel good about this. You can't want it too much. You want it too much, no way. No, totally. They'll get lockjaw. You got to be like in this sort of zen state of appreciating your surroundings and your company and being grateful for just where you are for everything to start working.
Yep, no question about it. So that's my fly, the Long Run One.
All right. Well, let's I do want to ask you a question about sort of Cheeky, Wingo. That's North Point brands, right? What are maybe some of the lessons, or I don't know if lessons is the right word, but what has been positive for y'all, like for joining 1% of the Planet or starting your 3% initiative, that maybe you could pass on to other business owners about your journey and how it's been a benefit to your business?
I think it's a really good question. And I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I think like the really important thing for us was to take a big step, right? What can we do now today, right? We need to understand our footprint. We need to work on our packaging. There are a bunch of things that we at North Point Brands are actively working on. And quite frankly, Rick, some of them take a year, 2, 3 years, or there's something you're always working on. But I guess my best advice to, if other business owners are out there listening or whatnot, just take a big step, join 1% for the Planet, make a commitment like that. And like a lot of the other steps will follow and will be a part of your process. But I think you can do some things right from the start that will really help accelerate you on your journey. It's really important that we all, I believe, Rick, if you're not at if you're a company and you're not at today, the leading edge of sustainably minded business practices, you're going to fall behind, because it's going to be the expectation that it already is in many ways, but it's going to be the expectation of consumers, or even retailers may force that through as well. And so, like we said several times, not only is it the most important thing, that it's just the right thing to do for the planet and conserving those places that we love, but I think that it can also be really good and smart for business as well.
Yeah. Well, Ted, I think that is a pretty positive message to wrap with. I wanted to make sure that everyone knows where to go to support your brand, and where can people get some gear?
Yeah, you can see our websites, cheekyfishing.com, wingooutdoors.com, or any of our anywhere they sell really high quality fishing reels around the country. You'll find them in our great retailers. We're actually super excited because we recently won a really coveted award at ICAST. We won the best new fly reel for the year. That's our spray series coming out in November. For a little company like ours, to achieve that and to win an award like that, up against some of the behemoths in the space, it really says a lot about the product itself. So we're thrilled about this spray that'll be available in November at retailers nationwide.
Awesome. Yeah. And congrats on that. That's a huge accomplishment getting that at ICAST, which is great. So
Yeah, thank you.
It's
To the whole team.
Yeah.
We were many months and months and months and months in development on that product. So
well, I'm stoked to check that one out. And I would just say, is for anyone listening that obviously is a fly angler, go to your local fly shop, test out a Cheeky. If they don't have it, tell them to get their butt in gear and start selling Cheeky, because they're giving back to the resource, and just one of many reasons to support a business that aligns with your values.
remember, any purchase of any Cheeky or Wingo products, 3% of that purchase of that revenue, whether you buy it at a fly shop or whatnot, is goes to conservation organizations. So I think that's awesome, and we're gonna keep accelerating our sustainability journey, and hopefully you'll have me back on in 3 or 4 more years, and I'll have some really exciting things to be talking about on our progress.
Awesome. Well, Ted, thank you very much for your time. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. It was a real pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for listening to The Sustainable Angler. Special thanks to Ted for all he does and all Cheeky Fishing and Wingo Outdoors does to protect what we all love. And if you like what you're hearing, if you could please leave a rating and review on iTunes or Apple Music. This helps to spread our message and hopefully inspire more anglers to protect the planet. We've also got a website up, thesustainableangler.com, where you can find blog posts, all of our previous episodes, as well as some sweet merch. So anyway, thanks for listening.